Okay, so the tune that we're working on today is called Nobody Else But Me. This is one of the best standards that can improve your jazz playing, and the reason is that because it has everything that you would encounter in other jazz tunes packed inside this song. So if you can use this song as a practice tool, it will be able to prepare you for anything that jazz standards can throw at you. So this tune covers 7 fundamental sounds that we're going to cover in depth in this lesson, and those are 5-to-1s in multiple keys, dominant II chords, passing diminished chords, backdoor dominant chords, chord walk-up progressions, tad Dameron turnarounds, and non-functional changes. I'm going to go ahead and comp over this tune so that way you can hear what the changes sound like. Feel free to skip ahead if needed. And as always, with my lessons, you'll be able to find the lesson materials linked in my Patreon, which will include detailed Guitar Pro, PDF, and Music XML files for all the examples in the etude on this lesson. And the audio of me playing will be embedded in the Guitar Profile for a truly interactive experience. Let's start with one of the most straightforward concepts, being 5-to-1s in multiple keys. So as you probably already know, every key has a 5 chord which wants to pull to that key's 1 chord. This chord motion is used to solidify the sound of a key. Notice if I play a G7 chord, you're gonna want to hear the C major chord being the 1 chord right after it. Jazz musicians have language that outlines this chord progression, which could sound like this, or like this. Now, in No One Else But Me, we have multiple key changes, and that's signaled by a 5-to-1 progression. Notice in measures 6 through 9, we have 2 different 5-to-1s, one in B and one in E. Now when you see this motion, just use your 5-to-1 licks like I showed you previously, but now in the relative keys that they're going to. Using language this way makes moving to multiple keys not a problem. So our second concept is dominant II chords. In jazz, you'll see this a ton, and that's when the II chord of our key is dominant instead of the normal minor chord quality. This dominant chord doesn't act like a normal 5-to-1, as it doesn't really want to pull to 1, it just kind of stays there. Oftentimes I hear intermediate players alter this chord and make it more of the 5-to-1 sound, but it's really this sound. This is a Lydian dominant sound or tonic dominant and has the 9, 13, and sharp 11 within it. Here are a couple more great voicings for this style of dominant chord. Now, when you see this chord, you can either use jazz language that sounds like this, or this, or you can make your own lines out of the scale that has this sound, which is the melodic minor scale built off the fifth of our dominant chord. So in this case, it's going to be A melodic minor, since the dominant 2 chord in our key that the song's in is D7. Very quick, I just wanted to plug my new Patreon tier that I just launched. You're going to want to subscribe to this new tier because I'm going to be posting a lot of exclusive content over on Patreon. So the next concept that you're going to see in this tune is something called passing diminished chords. So at the end of Nobody Else But Me, we have this progression. This is a classic example of passing diminished chords. There are two different ways to think about this type of chord. First, you can think about it just as a 5-to-1 progression. If we look at the first passing diminished chord, we're going to see a C sharp going to a D minor 7. When I see a passing diminished chord, or a diminished chord a half step below a major or minor chord, it will always function as a dominant chord of the chord that it's going to. So in this case, this C sharp diminish is going to function as an A7. So that means that we can use our 5-to-1 language over this, being A7 going to D minor. The second way that we can play over a passing diminished chord is by using triads. And I deal with passing diminished chords in this way when I see them moving downwards. So if you notice in our progression, the last diminished chord is an E flat, which moves to a D minor. So to deal with a diminished chord that resolves down, you're going to have to play the triads out of the diminished scale, but luckily there's a really easy guitar voicing that gives us all the triads, and it looks like this. Now you'll notice that within this voicing we have an F triad over an E flat. This F triad can be moved in minor thirds, and that's all the triads that we can use over this diminished chord. I want to give a quick shout out to the new sponsor of this channel, Stringjoy Strings. I've been using these strings for many years, and I'm so excited that they're finally partnering with this channel. I personally use the Broadway Pure Nickels, and I love them, and you hear them on every single video. If you're interested in purchasing these, just make sure to check out the link in the video description, and some of that money will go to supporting the channel, and I want to thank you in advance. All right, so the next concept is backdoor 5/1s. Let's look at measure 26 for an example of this. This B flat 7 is just a backdoor dominant to C major 7. This is just another way to get back to the 1 of whatever key we're in a less predictable fashion than just going 5-to-1. When you see this type of dominant, which is just a dominant built off the flat 7 of whatever key we're in, then you need to treat it like a dominant 2 chord and use the Lydian dominant or tonic dominant sound over it. So we can use the same grips that we've been using for our D7, but now over B flat 7 to comp and play it. And the same lines, just now over F melodic minor. So our next concept that Nobody Else But Me uses is walk-up progressions. Oftentimes in jazz, we're so used to playing over 2-5-1 progressions that when we see something else, it becomes kind of overwhelming. If we look at the last 3 bars of this tune, we can see a classic walk-up progression going from the 2 chord to the 5 chord. But you could ignore all these chords and rather just play a long 2-5 progression over the whole thing. lastly, you can just ignore all these chords altogether and just play lines that outline the key center. So in this case, you would play jazz language that outlines the chord of C major 7, like this. Or like this. So the second to last concept that nobody else but me uses is called the Tad Dameron turnaround. So instead of this at the end of a tune, like we're used to, we now have this. When first encountering this progression, it can be a bit overwhelming. However, a common trick to deal with all these chords is to just play C minor pentatonic over all of them, and it'll work. Check this out. You can also play what is called the Coltrane pattern by many people, which is just the chord tones of 1, 2, 3, and 5, played off of every chord in this progression. So the last concept is playing over non-functional changes. Let's look at measures 9 through 12 and you'll see what I'm talking about. These chords exist because Jerome Kern is simply reharmonizing the melody. So the melody, now this is the top of this D flat. And then this E flat is now the top of E flat. So of course the easiest way then to solo over this would be to just play the melody. 1, 2. You could also treat each chord as its own sound. So for example, when you're playing over the D flat, you could just use the language that we worked on before over C major, but now just over D flat since it outlines the major sound. And same goes for the E flat 7. You would just treat this as a tonic dominant and play E flat Lydian dominant sound or B flat melodic minor. So you can see by learning this tune, it not only is a great tune to learn, but it has everything you need to be successful in most jazz standards. I want to give you something to practice for this tune and play an etude over this whole tune and try to demonstrate everything that we learned in this lesson. If you would like the PDF and Guitar Pro for not only this etude, but everything in this lesson, then make sure to check out my Patreon, which will be linked in the video description below. And thank you so much for watching this video about Nobody Else But Me. If there's other jazz standards that you want me to analyze in a super deep way like in this video, then let me know in the comment sections below. Also, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, none of this would be possible, and I truly appreciate each and every single one of you. And as always, thanks so much for watching this video, and remember to always keep swinging.